Welcome to the Pink Room, a space for real talk by real women about the real issues of our day.
As minorities, we're not only your day laborers. We're not only the ones that clean your houses or your hotels, right? We are human beings that have capacity to be part of every area of this country.
Our strategy needs to be to get into these political offices.
Every election, every seat, every office.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Teresa, if I would just like to say, I don't consider myself a minority. If the world wants to see us as minorities, because we are actually the majority, but if they want to see us as minorities, then call us the super minority.
There you go. Okay. Yeah.
People started to post some microaggressions that they were experiencing from their professors.
Wow.
And hearing so many perspectives, they're like, you have to do something. If I have the resource, I'll do well as well. I'll do well just as well as others do. Don't make things easier for me. I just want the resource. That's all. And I think that's the misconception, that they think that we want handouts. We don't want handouts. We just want what the others get. That's it. Give us what you give others, and we will do just as well.
Excellent. Ashley.
As long as you can ensure that one group of people in this country have access to good education,
right,
another group does not have access to adequate education, right, you basically guarantee that the group that has less access to good education, then remain the sickest people in our system. And so you have the conflation of several policies, or the absence of policies, that basically create and sustain the perfect storm in this country.
That's not where your affirmation is going to come from.
Right.
Humans fail us all the time. It is not in someone else. You can't find in someone else what you cannot find first within yourself. What entryways were there for someone else to come in and feed you false narratives? You have to build up those fortresses first. And when I say fortresses, I don't mean walls to block people out. I mean confident within yourself to know that you can look in the mirror and say to the mirror, Latoya, you are loved. I love you. I love you. You are beautiful.
Start your watch parties. Cast the Pink Room on your HD TVs. Post your comments in the chat. This space is yours too.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to Pink Room number 10. This is a huge accomplishment. We've been doing the Pink Room for some months now, and this is our 10th installment. At this time, I want to share with each one of you that for We Women International, as we do annually, we'll be celebrating the Day of the Girl. And I'm going to share with each one of you some of the events that will be coming up soon in For We Women International, so that you may hopefully join in from your neck of the woods. So we start with an event that will be happening in Brooklyn, New York. My Voice, Our Equal Future. That is the theme of this year's Day of the Girl. And on Saturday, next Saturday, October 10th, from 11 to 2, the Brooklyn team will be at let me see if I find here where they will be. They will be at the shelter, and they will be talking about empowering girls to leaders to lead with my voice. If you want more information, you can also check out the flyer that will be posted on For Real Women's Facebook page, and you'll be able to follow and ask for more information for that event. But this is happening October 10th, celebrating International Day of the Girl. And then we have an event coming up in California. They're walking to Hidden Paradise River. Again, check out our Facebook page for more information. Mothers and Daughters for Girls 4 years old and up, Sunday, October 11th from 6 a.m. They will be walking with their moms. There will also be an extra ticket raffling that will take place. We ask you to join in, follow us on the Facebook page. And then we have, after that, an event that will be taking place soon with girls in Philadelphia. This is going to take place on Zoom. We're going to ask you to join on Zoom. Here's the address, www.fionaharewood.com/forward-real. She'll be hosting an event for girls called Real versus Reality. It's a panel discussion, of course, free of charge. And then we have an event that's coming up soon in Grand Cayman with our team in Grand Cayman. They're going to also be dealing with My Voice or Equal Future. This is in collaboration with the Ashley Shillingford Foundation for Positive Living and the Grand Cayman Academy. It's going to be on Friday, October 9th at 8:30 a.m. It will take place in King's SDA Church. If you're a Grand Cayman, make sure that you show up for this event. Don't miss it. And then we have Day of the Girl. Finally, we have Day of the Girl taking place in Florida. And they're going to have a tea toast for girls. And their facilitators are two invited facilitators. They're going to talk to girls about starting their own businesses. Girls ages 10 to 17. You do not want to miss it. We have the email addresses from two of our members. We're also going to be posting that on our Facebook page. If you're in Florida, make sure that you join. It will all take place on Zoom, and we are inviting you to join in. And at this time, I want to invite my co-host as we join today, and we have such a very important topic today. Today, we're talking about decolonizing the curriculum, and just going to have the cohort say hi, the hostesses say hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
So we have a video that we want to screen today, and it's the video. Last week, we dedicated the show to Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This week, we want to dedicate the show to Henrietta Boggs. Very interesting story. I am sure that many of you perhaps had never heard of it before, but we want to share her story with you in the hopes that you will continue to be inspired. This amazing woman and the amazing contribution that she made to a nation.
Etta Boggs was born in Spartanburg, South Carolina during the influenza pandemic of 1918. She was raised in segregated Birmingham, Alabama, but her life took her far from home on a wild ride that is the stuff of movies. In 1940, Boggs was a restless student at Birmingham Southern College when she visited her aunt and uncle at their coffee farm in Costa Rica. There, she met another farmer named Jose Figueres Ferrer. They fell in love, traveled Costa Rica on Jose's motorcycle, and married the next year, against the wishes of her parents back home. But the man known as Don Pepe was much more than a farmer. He was a vocal opponent of Costa Rica's government. When he was exiled, he, Henrietta, and their two children went on the run, moving to Mexico City, where they helped to smuggle arms back to the Costa Rican resistance. Eventually, they moved back to Costa Rica, where Ferrer commanded a rebel army that toppled the government. In 1948, he became president, and Boggs, the First Lady of Costa Rica. As her husband instituted democracy in the country, Boggs convinced him to give women and Costa Ricans of African heritage the right to vote. When their marriage ended in 1951, Boggs returned home to Alabama, where she joined the civil rights movement in its early days. She was in Montgomery during the pivotal 1956 bus boycott, driving black workers to their jobs so they could maintain the boycott. Boggs later moved to New York, where she worked at the United Nations on the Costa Rican mission. She was an activist, a writer, a pilot, a volunteer for groups like the League of Women Voters and Youth Build, and the subject of a 2016 documentary titled First Lady of the Revolution.
The only way to live is to live every single second as though it's going to be the very last one.
Henrietta Boggs, a legend who spent her extraordinary life fighting for the rights of women and minority groups, died earlier this month at home in Montgomery, Alabama, of coronavirus. She was 102 years old.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Isn't that an amazing story? Yes.
Wow. Yes.
Henrietta Boggs,
Never heard of her.
and you are from Costa Rica.
Born and raised Costa Rican. Graduated sixth
Wow.
grade. Graduated high school. I know I read my books. I wasn't sleeping in class. Never heard of her.
You know why, and you know why it is so critical that we are highlighting her now, because we're talking about decolonizing the curriculum. And one of the major problems with our curriculum is that there is no mention of female heroes, sheroes. She's a shero.
Yes.
Clearly,
Yes.
she had a lot to do with the revolution in Costa Rica and what Costa Rica has become today, a nation without army. She was the architect of that.
Yes.
So we are so proud that we were able to pull that up and find that and share that. And we hope that all the women who are watching,
Yes.
I hope that you too honor her life. This woman went up. To me, she really did not waste time. She was 102. Were it not for Corona, she probably was still kicking butts.
I was
But I also
thinking it
wonder
took
how-
coronavirus to take her out.
It
Hey.
took coronavirus to
Wow.
take her out because she divorced Pepe Figueres, came to the U.S., and she did not stay under a bushel. Here was she again, leading the movement on the rights for Black people to vote, making sure that people had housing. I mean, just an amazing life.
But I wonder if she's even written in the curriculum of the Alabama educational system.
Good question.
She definitely went against the grain, and I have relatives who were from Alabama. Never heard of her.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. If there is ever an international icon, someone who has made significant contributions to the movements of people of color and women, it would have to be Henrietta Boggs. She needs to be written in every single school book, history book, all over the world. So more power to her.
You know, one of the reasons that it's unlikely that, you know, she would have gotten into any history book here in the U.S. is because remember that Central America was dominated by, you know, the United Fruit Company, and, you know, they had control over every government. And this is one of that, you know, going to be in the history books because her work helped to overthrow vestiges of government that were still holding on to, you know, controlling these independent nations, you know, because of their economic interests in the countries.
Right, absolutely. And if you are a Costa Rican or you have been in Costa Rica, married to a Costa Rican, and Tricia knows this, in Costa Rica, I always heard about him. He was the person who brought back Black people onto the table, gave them. No, it was her. It was her doing. It was her doing, and I hope that from now onward we honor that legacy of this champion woman. Amazing work. I don't know, Tricia, as the Costa Rican on the panel, what would you like to say?
Well, we've heard from ever since how we got to Costa Rica because of building the railroad, United Fruit Company, and how till 1948, Black people weren't allowed past a certain point in the country, weren't allowed to go to the capital. And when that happened, so traditionally, even to the party, the party, maybe like the Democratic Party here, most Black people ascribe to that party till recently. So yes, and never heard her name mentioned. His son became president as well.
Right.
So it's like one of those traditional, very high in politics families. Never heard her name mentioned. So maybe now that if somebody saw it outside of Costa Rica, it'll make Costa Rica news.
We want to just say that her life is proof that you do not need to be of the same color. You do not need to speak the same language. You don't have even to be born in the country to understand where there is injustice, and you need to stand up against it. So she's my new Shiro. She really is my new Shiro. Where there is injustice, we need to stand up against it. It doesn't matter my color, my race, my religion. If it's injustice, I need to be a voice against it. So we begin today talking about, we're going to do our check-in that we usually do, but we're going to specifically talk about some issues here before we bring on our guest. And we start with Breonna Taylor.
Yes. So I'm actually at peace when it comes to my heart check, knowing that, you have the opportunity to live an experience where the latest news is that people who are watching us, just like you saw that great piece on Henrietta Boggs, the law still works. And here this grand jury, anonymous grand juror actually filed a suit so that the recordings of this grand jury could be released to the people who create these laws, who help those politicians create the laws, And so this actually allowed those attorneys and individuals who were not permitted in that room to hear so much of the stories are just misconstrued. I just tell you, it was a good thing, good timing. Whoever was on the side, the law was on the side of this juror who filed this suit so that the information could be revealed about how much the stories just don't match what was told. You actually get to see how the picture was just painted so that the jurors would come up with this type of a charge for this one officer, though that there were three, actually more, who were involved in the murder of Breonna Taylor. It was just reckless. The information was wrong, just all lost, all of the above. So this transparency that's beginning to take place needs to continue and should have always existed here in America's soil. And unfortunately, it's used conveniently. But here the opportunity permitted so that the public and the attorneys who didn't have permission again are now able to view that material, and then they're going to take some further actions. And if you can remember, sometime back right here on this very pink room,
that's right,
we called out the AG, the African American from Kentucky, Republican Cameron Green. Yes, we can give him a name so people recognize what he has done, where he just continuously did what the rest of the world has always done. It's the disrespect of a living and or dead Black woman specifically, but primarily women of color. And he failed to execute the duties of the office of which he serves. He was put in by the people, and he failed to execute that and take immediate action for this murder because he was too busy lollygagging with politicians so that they can continue with the tomfoolery that exists in our country as we see today. It's such an embarrassment, but these are just truly the words of what's happening. So if the world is watching, yes, this is what's happening in America. And yes, Cameron Green allowed this to take place on his watch. However, the law has sided so that now this information is available. And so we'll see what happens from here, but just keep the hope, people, and find some peace in that.
And this is why the voices of the people matter. Some people say, well, why did they protest? No, it is because of that pressure that gave this juror the wherewithal and to say, no, release the transcripts, because you never told us as jurors that we could charge these people. You never brought it before us.
Never mentioned murder.
You never mentioned it. And then the one person that gets charged was charged for an apartment that was her next door neighbor, right? And then now we know that the bullet that supposedly came from her boyfriend was not the bullet that hit the officer. So that means that they probably shot each other up, right? And his bullet hit the carpet, right? Now we know all these things. Now we know that he was ill-treated even when he There are videos of them telling him to walk out. You know, he's bare feet. He's asking for her. They won't give him an answer as to how she is. One of the cops told him it is unfortunate that he did not die. You know, enough is enough.
Wow.
So
Plain and simple.
that we called it out, and we called out the AG. And notice the AG was on the short list to be one of the Supreme Court justices, and I think that he was playing to that in the hopes that he would have that position.
Right.
We told you, sir, you were not going to be able to sleep. There was not going to be able to be peace. And there you go.
That's right.
There you
and
go.
again, the story, the story. Sorry, Norca, that just come out in here. I can't even find a word. I'm lost for words right now, because even the part where they mention this particular officer who's fired and charged with this ridiculous slap on the pinky fingernail, he said, he made a comment in there like, yeah, it was late at night, and then maybe a few minutes later he goes, yeah, they tried to ambush us. So if you knew that we're sleeping, because no knock warrants about an element of surprise. You want to catch people when they least expect it. So you knew that they were resting. So how now, a few sentences later, you say you felt ambushed? Yeah, you were ambushed by your coworker, your partner's bullets.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But, you know, it cannot bring her back.
No.
And the $12 million will never bring her back. I saw people, and one of the things that we posted on the For Green Women Facebook page, there were so many lies going on about her, that she was in drugs, that she had been fired. You know, and USA Today had to write an entire piece kind of checking people like, no, these memes are lies. This is not true. But I'm glad that, you know, because of the people out there pressuring, that everything, the Bible says it, right? It will come to light, that everything is coming.
Oh, hey. And Buddha has said that the three things will always show up. And that is, you can never hide the sun, the moon, and the truth. So it will come out.
I love it.
It's going to come out. Yes.
I love it.
You know, I just want to say this. I can't wait for the movie to come out, so we can like really know all of the, you know, ins and outs. I'm hoping somebody, Perry, this is your call. You need to get your hands on the rights.
Ava DuVernay.
Yes.
And you know, yes, we need to see everything. You know,
Ava, go Ava.
Yes, there you go.
So Shonda, this guy earned three things. He earned lollagollery, polytrition, and tomfoolery.
Yes.
All three of the same thing. This guy, listen.
I love it.
You're not playing.
We're talking about curriculum, so he got an education.
There you go.
Love it, Shonda. So we want to go now to the other thing that we want to discuss today and kind of check in ourselves on is, interestingly enough, Serena Williams.
So Serena Williams has been trying to win a title since her baby was born. And for whatever reason, attempts haven't become productive. And this last one, she had to pull out because she pulled her Achilles tendon. And having to justify herself by saying she still believes she has it in her. She just turned 39, but she doesn't believe it's the end of her career. And she's going to go rest and try again.
Yes.
And the reason why we thought of bringing this up is because for some reason, I was talking to someone about that today. Men age gracefully and women just age for some reason, right? Men look like they're more distinguished as they grow older, and we're just trying to keep up.
Wait.
No, wait, let me finish.
What about J-Lo? What about J-Lo?
Let me
Excuse
finish. My turn. That is what is commonly said, right? So then, yes, Teresa, women like J-Lo and Shakira come about, but they are look like the exception that make the rule, right? I think that it's going to take women like Serena that are continually fighting, that do not take no for an answer, that do not take this is not for you for an answer, that are going to say, I'm going to define my space, I'm going to define my role, and I'm going to say when I'm ready to retire, and I'm not ready to retire. And whatever her next chapter is, that's one of the things I like about her. She's working on her next chapter during her current chapter. So she's already branched out into philanthropy, looking at maternal mortality and talking about that, fashion. I mean, all of these different things. The girl power, thinking about her daughter, but all of that to say, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And I think that I still have a lot in me. And that is inspiring. That is really inspiring because especially now with coronavirus, all the jobs that have been lost, all the rearranging that we've had to do with our lives. It's so inspiring to see a woman who is at the top of her game say, I'm going to call the shots. And I'm going to be the one that decides what my next step is, when my next step is, and you're not going to do that for me. So,
yes,
totally agree with you, Tracy. I think that we have been so conditioned, right, to really see our aging in such detriments that I think a lot of it is perhaps even psychological, right? Mm-hmm. Perhaps it's not just necessarily physical, but it just could be that psychologically we just see ourselves just decreasing and going down because we've been told this.
That's right.
Right? So you have the people who are saying it's because now she has a baby, it's because she has more weight, and she just says, I'm still going out there to play. I think she has a right to do that.
Yeah.
No one should question it.
Absolutely.
She's the GOAT. She's the greatest of all time.
She is. Yes,
she has contributed a lot to the tennis world, not only financially, but just think about before Serena. Nobody used to watch tennis. Like McEnroe breaking his. I mean, come on. When Serena and her sister Venus came on, that's really when tennis really got a boost, right? Yeah. So they need to be praying that she don't leave them right now. And because a lot of young people of color have come into tennis, right? Mm-hmm. So they stand with her. Yes, Teresa.
And she's from Compton. I just have to say that.
Okay. Yes, Teresa. You're extra special there. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So let's go to our next topic for today. And we want to talk a little bit about Teresa, what can you tell us?
Okay, when I think back about this, it's the word shameful, like the word that just pops into my mind. But I want to tell you how I feel, because we are doing heart check, and I feel that this is just the mirror of what our society is facing. We have Trump with his, racist rhetoric, letting people into he's leading people in this I think territory where I don't think anybody who is racist, and I think we've talked about the fact that racism comes in all forms, and not that any of us might or not be that we are not exempt from actually at some point maybe being racist towards somebody, and I know that we all have to be checking ourselves and how we evaluate other human beings. However, I've read through my history books that this country, that the United States of America, has normally looked down upon the racist attitudes. You might have them, right? You might have them, and you're in your right to feel whichever way you want. But to make racism, something that people embrace, and to really intoxicate the younger generations with ideas of how humans should differently because they don't look like you. definitely one of the horrific things that this country has experienced and will, unfortunately, for generations, continue to feel the repercussions of. Through the debate, we saw that when Trump did not denounce the the supremacist groups. Unfortunately, he gave them ammunition to continue doing what they're doing, and I could that really hoping because I mean you always want the best, and not that. I think every human being has the capacity for even as much as the capacity for good. I believe that. I believe that all of us, depending on our circumstances, will do what we need to survive. And unfortunately, I think that's what he's doing. He's doing what he needs to survive, but it is evil, and it is going to generations to come because he did not take a position that is going to benefit all of the citizens of this country, and every person who's citizen or not. I believe that it's so much nicer to see Joe Biden. I think be a little bit more assertive. I think that he did. I don't know. I probably would have been the same maybe if I was in his position. How do you deal with a rabid dog? How do you deal with that? How do you shut somebody like that up? I don't know. I just think
Yeah.
What I want to say is this. I am incredibly proud of Joe Biden for having taken the moment to say that he was proud of his son, and that as about 20 million Americans as his son who struggle with substance abuse, that he loves his son and that he's proud of him. I think that, I read on social media some comments by some influencers saying that this is what so many Americans needed to hear from their parents, and Joe Biden said it. And so I think to me, that was the highlight of the entire debate, just knowing that there was some humanity there, that there's humanity, in this country. And I really hope that we get to see that in the White House really soon.
Teresa, I fully agree with you. I had to rewatch the debate, and I usually do that because I wanted to be sure that, because when you're looking at it the first time and there was so much going on and you're kind of like, what? I posted this comment on my Facebook page. It's a circus. Like, what is going on? All this sidelining, yelling, and whatnot. But I revisited again with a colder head, and I do agree with you. I feel that it would have been hard for anyone, not even cold-blooded Obama, to keep your composure in a situation like that. Not only was this person yelling at the sidelines and interrupting, bullying the moderator, calling out, to me, the lowest you can go. I mean, this is an argument this is a debate between potential leaders of the free world, as they call it. And to debase the debate to your son is on drugs. I mean, come on, how low can you go?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yes. And at one point I was like, don't listen to his personal, but I was glad that he made the statement saying, my son's like many, and I'm proud of my son. I mean, what a moment. I thought, wow, if I was his son, what a moment that his father stood on national TV, and instead of ignoring that, which I probably would have done, took the time to say, no, I'm affirming my son, and I'm affirming every other American who has struggled.
Yes.
I thought that was fantastic. But in all, I just felt that it was a mess. It was embarrassing, the way it was carried. And I've watched many debates even before I moved to America. And I think there was always this tone of civility. Was this, it's these two persons who are vying for this position. This has got to be, as many reporters have said, the worst they have seen in their lifetime. I think it's so embarrassing that instead of saying call off the debates, no. We need to have another debate. And the rules need to be changed to face that. We should not be putting our heads in the sand right now, because people, to me, this is how you reveal who you are. And this should be a revelation to America. We hope that people's eyes are open. But you still have those people who are like,
no. Look, you know what people like support Trump are saying? That he went out and he did what he was supposed to do, and it was a good thing that he didn't let Biden talk, and because this is their mentality. Another thing that I saw, now that with COVID diagnosis, that I personally, sorry, I have a hard time believing anything coming out of the White House. To me, this is another mini series that we're going through, and but anyway, side note from that, his supporters are like, he's such a warrior. He's such a warrior. Really, he has the nation's top medical professionals at his bedside, at his whim. How much of a warrior do you have to be? I mean, warrior women who are left, because especially women of color left to rely on their strength, right? Because they're stronger than women who are not of color. No, I don't know. To me, this is just, I don't think that anybody who supports that ideology is going to change because of what they saw. Because as Trump said, if he stands Avenue and kill somebody, they'll still find a reason to elevate him and to protect him, because it has come to, he has become their idol. He is their idol. And, and this is people who in the Ten Commandments, right? These are people who, thou shalt not have other gods before me. This is the same people who are idolizing this human being.
I don't understand why we're surprised, though. This is the same man that 4 years ago ridiculed someone who had a handicap.
Yeah.
This is the same one who, in the debate with Hillary Clinton, would not leave her side.
Right.
Called her a nasty woman.
Right.
This isn't a new guy.
Exactly.
This isn't a new guy. This is the same guy that put insults and called each one of his Republican peers names. Had a name for each one.
Yeah.
This isn't a new guy. Right. It's not a new low. It's the same old low. He fights because he doesn't have it.
I think there is a whole, and I totally agree. But I think in some way you harbor the hope that the position has given you some sense when you realize.
But it happens the other.
Right.
The other way around. You get the position because you are already there. The position shouldn't give it to you. It makes no sense to think
the position doesn't give it to you. I get it. But I think that there is an awesomeness that comes with that role that you should be able to say, wow,
not this dude.
No, clearly not this dude.
Clear. And that's why I keep saying I don't know why I'm surprised. There is nothing at all that surprises me with him. He has ridiculed everybody at every occasion. He hasn't missed an opportunity to make fun of people of every nation, tribe, people, and tongue. He goes out. He doesn't care.
That's right.
I don't see why we're surprised.
I want to say something.
Surprised. I wouldn't use the word surprise. I want to say that my feeling is more embarrassment. That's really what I think.
That the world is watching this, but
hey, I know the New Yorker, and we know the skeletons that Chanda, the skeletons that are in the closet. So we've heard about him way before he got on this platform.
Right. I'm not claiming his embarrassment.
Anyway,
I'm not claiming it. I'm not claiming his embarrassment.
No, I just think that I definitely. But the world sees the U.S.
That is the way I'm looking at it. The country.
Because look, the president is PR person for the U.S. Period. That's his position.
The world has been watching him for 4 years.
Yeah.
All of them are standing in a group, and he comes and elbows his way to the front. The world has been watching him. They have been laughing at.
Such a toddler. He's such a toddler. Things that.
But anyway, let's move on because they're,
I just have to say this one thing.
Yes, go ahead, Teresa.
that I heard Trevor Noah say, and I thought this is so head on. This young man is just so wise beyond his years.
Always.
He said that he said that, you know, what are the he says he blames Obama for everything, but one thing Obama is at fault of is to giving Trump a massive identity crisis, because you know, Obama was, you know, just so, I don't want to say the word perfect, but I think he's the epitome of class and just swap, you know, the man all over people, and people like him. They like him. And Trump can't get that he will never be as good as Obama. And that is his whole, that's, you know, how can a black man be better than me? Well, yes. And that's his whole, that's the big problem we're dealing with right now. So it's like, if Obama wouldn't have been so good, you know, that's what he told Michelle, right? It's his fault. It's fault that Obama was, you know, he was so smart, and he is so, you know, like, Obama's so smart. I mean, he could have carried on conversations on any topic. And he, you know, I think was one of our best PR representatives for this country. Yeah. And then we get the total opposite, and he will never live that down.
This is for a season. So. It's a season. It's just for a season. People.
It's a long season.
I know.
It's been long. And now we go to Judge Amy Coney Barrett, and we have to say that the announcement of the proposition of her position as a justice led to the infection with COVID-19 of several lawmakers. So that's very interesting that occurred. She claims that she already had COVID-19, but from the president and his wife right down. But more importantly, I want to say that over 1,000 of alumni, some of them her peers from her cohort, signed a petition voicing their concerns over her nomination, which I found very interesting. The issue, I believe, is not her religion. This is the way I look at it. I think she should have a right to practice her religion. All of us should have a right to practice our religion, believe in God, whoever we want to believe in. And I think we're fully in support, and we should be in full support of her religious liberty. She has that right. But the concern stems that she may try to use her religious beliefs to legislate from the bench, right? And that is a problem. And why is this a problem? And let me try to explain this and break this down for my Christian friends who are always questioning this. This is why this is a problem. The minute each one of us begin to create and support laws from the lens of our own religious positions, we're going to violate the religious freedom of the other person that does not believe like us. It's simple, ladies and gentlemen. It's simple, right? I have particularities in my particular religion, but I should never, ever legislate, judge people, keep people out, take away their opportunities because they do not believe like me. At the end of the day, our humanity trumps all of that, right? So some of her personal positions have called into question. I just want to read part of one of the letters that she signed. She said that she was in a Right to Life group, and it was founded in 1972, right after Roe versus Wade. And the letter talks about the criminalization of doctors who perform abortions, criminalizing women, not supportive of discarding the frozen embryos or selective reduction through the IVF process, that should be criminalized. And these things are very problematic. Not only, listen, I'm going to be frank here. I would not have an abortion. But then again, who am I to judge? Right? Because perhaps I don't have the life circumstances that some people have. But does that mean that because I would not have an abortion, in my mind, because I have not lived circumstances that may make me want to decide that, does that mean that if I am in a position of power, I should then legislate for those people who do? And listen, yes, I get, oh my God, how come you're saying that it's right to life? I get it. I totally get it. But here's where my problem is with that right to life debate. We need to look at the totality of a human being. If we're going to be against abortions because it's the fetus, we need to be against police brutality. We need to be against crime and guns. We need to be against anything that attempts against human life, wars, anything that attempts against human life in general. Then we need to be against these things. It cannot only be about abortion. It needs to be the totality of the human life. So that's my bit on Judge Amy Barrett. I don't know if any one of you would like to share, but that's basically my position on her. She has a right to her religion, but she does not have a right to use her religion to legislate for other people.
4 years ago, she said what she's doing is wrong. 4 years ago, she said that what's happening to her right now should not be done. So I want to know what happened 4 years ago that's different than what's happening now. And the answer is we won. That was the answer. Because we won, now we get to do it. When we weren't winning, we didn't let anybody else do it.
Agreed. So people flip-flop on these positions, right? So, and that again makes me wonder about, you want to put yourself as if your positions are so infallible, but yet look at how you quickly change the rules to benefit.
Yeah, it's hypocrisy and it's you know, and it's all of its splendor, and you know, we're seeing it, and it's, you know, and this is the human beings, you know, these are the people that, you know, are supposed to be the moral conscience of the country, right? These are the right. These are the people who, you know, claim to have, you know, a moral compass way bigger than the left. And so these are the same people who, you know, are being hypocrites when it comes to something that is convenient to them. And speaking on the point of abortion, you know, I think that the reality is that you wouldn't want anybody telling you what to do with your body. Absolutely. Period. And if we're going to get into stuff like that, you know, why don't we start legislating on men masturbating, you know, and throwing away their semen? Those are live cells in there. Give me a break, right?
Listen,
you know,
listen. Yes, Teresa, I'm with you.
Okay. Okay.
That's life. That's life going there. Yeah. True.
That's like, you know, why don't the Proud Boys, you know, the Proud Boys have a mandate, you know, like they've taken an oath not to masturbate. Why? Because that's their life force, right? And so look, you know, if we're going to start telling people, then we would start telling men what to do also. Now, you know, this is all an issue because it's women that they're dealing with, you know. Why don't men get told what to do with their bodies?
Right.
So
I agree.
You know, I think that this whole issue is about control.
Right.
It definitely is.
This is
I remember
patriarchy again in function.
Yes, thank you. It's back to the same thing.
Yes.
And if you look at who her mentor is, right, the infamous Scalia, who was one for, and I may be getting this term so wrong, educators or historians or historians, but he was one about following the originality of the Constitution.
Yes. Yes.
Where she would not even be in the position that she is in. She wouldn't even have the ability to speak, and she wouldn't be able to have the decision to talk about exactly what she's talking about, the very rights of bodies, especially that of women's bodies. But then if you also look at the person who has now nominated her for justice is against the American Health Care Act, and she is also one to say, you know, there's some areas in there that, you know, I'm not too comfortable with. She did have some decisions about certain things when Justice Roberts made some points, but then the same president who's putting her in, who's trying to do with exactly the same thing, just confusion, entitlement, the lack of integrity, the convenience of when you can bend the arc of moral justice to work for you when you wanted to, or you make these laws sound so convoluted that they're not so easy to decipher. And so when you look at people like her, I mean, I have nothing against her other than the views that she holds. It's dangerous that you're putting people like this who are going to take their religion and make it as if it is a law.
Absolutely.
And it's unfortunate because that's what conservatives really are really focused on, and evangelicals who don't want to go against the grain of originality, which would eliminate all of us who are on this lovely pink room.
I think that there are even things beyond this layer of problem when we look at the philosophies that have been against abortion and the reasons why. And it isn't only about religious beliefs, because we can't pick and choose from the Bible what we do and don't believe in. There's entire chapters about taking care of the foreigner that we're just not reading, apparently, right?
Yes, agree.
And there is, but the principle of how minorities are made and who becomes a minority how. And if we look at the Democratic versus Republican years and where more abortions happen,
right?
It's not in Democrat years.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that are problematic with this whole episode. There's nothing right about it. And what frustrates me is there anything we can do beyond talking at this point? Is it a foregone deal? Are we just saying, oh, well, she's in? Is there anything that can be done to stop it from happening? Because at this point, she's in, it's 40 years of her.
Mercy. Yeah.
So
that point is actually my concern.
That's my concern.
She's young. She has a long track record, because remember, that's an appointment for life until you choose to retire. That is a concern that we need to really look at it. Now, she has been nominated. We don't know what's going to happen. Some of the people got COVID themselves. We're in such a troubling. This is a kind of like a ship that cannot find. So your questions are good, Tricia. What else?
What's next?
Yeah.
It's getting like you said. It's between the hearings, the confirmation. If those will be able to reconsider those points that have been brought up here in the pink room and throughout America, will those other conservative, possibly if they consider themselves, decide that they will see, but I doubt it, because they're so busy trying to line their pockets that, they don't want to lose their elections. They don't want to lose their seats, because most of them will be up for election in next year, next 2 years, something to that degree.
You know what I think would help to change it a little bit? It would have to be the pressure of their constituents. Because we've seen how Collins changed her tone when her constituents started saying, listen, those agreements that you're taking up there, they don't work for us. So now she started changing, and she actually said that she disagreed. The constituents have to make themselves known. They need to make their voices known. They need to say clearly. And also, when they start putting support under their opponents, that may be something. But anyway, I think it's important for us to have a view into that. And this is the reason why we do the pink room, because we do believe that as women, our voices need to be clear in these current events. We cannot be hiding behind, we don't do politics, or we don't listen. It impacts everything in your life. Everything in your life.
That's right.
It impacts you. It impacts your children, the generations after. So it is critical that we're clear on the issues and that we can speak to them. But I do not want us to take up more time, because we have a very important guest with us today.
Norca.
Yes.
I just think this is incredibly valuable. I just wanted to share this before we go on to our speaker, to our guest. I remember listening to a theology professor say this: the moment that the right to decide what you want to do with your body, in this case, in abortion, the day that the abortion right is taken away in the United States, you can start kissing the rest of your constitutional rights goodbye.
Absolutely.
And I believe that firmly.
Absolutely.
firmly. So I have to make sure that
Totally, Teresa. Thank you for that. And that's the thing that many of us need to understand.
Yeah.
You go against another person's rights, you're giving them the right to go against yours. So be very mindful about that. So I want to introduce our guest. We're so excited to have her. Her name is Dr. Soribel Kenau. She's associate professor for educational leadership in the Department of Educational and Community Programs. She was recently chosen as a diversity fellow at Queens College in the City University of New York. Her research has focused on examining the diverse systemic issues and reformation of urban schools while assessing the administrative, teaching, and community collaborations that facilitate positive student, academic, and behavioral outcomes. In particular, in marginalized community, Dr. Henao is also recently voted as the chair of the Black Latinx Faculty and Staff Association. We're so excited to have Dr. Henao with us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And we think that this is such a very critical topic, in particular at the time that we're living in. So thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I couldn't be more excited. I mean, listening to how passionate each one of you has been in the last hour has been an indication that this is completely thought of in a very extreme and thoughtful way, but because it is the implications of how education has continuously been at the forefront and ignored at the same time. And I want to emphasize that this is not without any notice. Our system is set up this way. The fact that only 8% of federal funding goes to education, only 8%, while the majority is still going to the military and our public health crisis is still an issue. Recently being a part of several other committees and every now and then hearing somebody say, hey, we need to really focus on reopening our schools. How about we work on being anti-racist, right? Because the fact of the matter is that opening schools during a public health crisis is going to make things worse. And COVID only exposed how racist the system really is. It's easy for us to get stuck in explaining what we want to allocate as the obvious. Yes, we have systemic issues. We have inequities. We are currently fighting for social justice because, like with Eric Garner, it was seen again. We saw the culprit and we saw the victim do the same exact thing. I can't breathe. We can't breathe, right? We've gotten to the point where we no longer can hold it in, and our justice system has to face it. There is also this critical period of going to what the point of this conversation is, what are we teaching our children? Can you believe in the next 5 years? I'm not even going to give it that long because it's already happening. And I believe Tricia said earlier, before the program started, how in other countries from a global perspective, they are intentionally planning the curriculum around where they want that generational cohort to be in 10, 20 years.
Right.
Where we don't even realize that we are being bamboozled into that. And we are being trained to think in a way that minimalizes our curiosity so that we don't form our own thoughts and opinions. And opinions without credibility are just plans.
That's right.
Right?
Sure.
And unless you're moving without that plan being strategized, doesn't really matter.
Right.
So there's a lot to think here regarding the curriculum because the curriculum in itself is not necessarily the problem. The institutionalization of putting the curriculum out. And in the end, who's being tested and why do the high stakes testings take place so that this curriculum is reflected on what it is that our children are going to learn?
So Dr. Soribel, we want to start breaking it down in bits and pieces for people, because when you hear a title like this, you know, those of us that are moving in higher academia, we kind of get it. But oftentimes when you say you're going to decolonize the curriculum, people start getting afraid because they wonder, is it that you're going to be a revisionist of history? What exactly do we mean with decolonizing the curriculum? You gave some bullet points in your introduction that are critical to this.
Yeah, so I want to start by saying that just because we're in higher ed doesn't mean that we understand it. We are constantly working with people that believe and think that when they hear diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's the same thing. And they are respectively 3 different areas. There are also folks who believe that because there are women on pamphlets, that's diversity. That is not diversity. In fact, because of women, everybody else is here. Women are always at the forefront. So don't utilize that to basically make your quota stand out.
Right.
That's not what this is about. This is about power. This is about understanding that you are now being confronted with the fact that you're about to be deconstructed because the dismantling is real and you are crumbling and don't even know how to respond to it. So the word decolonizing is intimidating because when you something, you're taking it away from them.
Right.
In thinking of how we begin to decolonize conversations, we also have to think about the power of the culture. What is it about that culture that remains relevant? And when you are no longer relevant, you are indisposable. So you are constantly thinking of your next steps and how you plan on staying relevant. You are looking to interrupt and disrupt, even if it doesn't make sense.
Wow.
And in thinking of the decolonizing moment, what ends up happening is that when they are now seeing more Black and brown faces rise up because we're here, we're not going anywhere, that intimidation factor of, wait a minute, they're Black, they're brown, they're brilliant, they're 3 Bs, and we are scared. And now we're going to have to try to cultivate a moment that's going to make them question themselves, because that's what we've always done. And we're on to them now, and they know that we're on to them. And them being white folks, white people, white people need to listen. This is your time to be active listeners. This is not your time to stand up and rise up. If you cannot show up physically, we know you need tax write-offs. Give your money to those who need it. Give it, because we don't need any more Rachel Dolezals. We don't need any more Jessica Cruz. We don't need any more.
Wait, Doc. Wait, did you really just say it?
Say it. You were laughing. I didn't say it. You said what? Say that again. We don't need what?
We don't need any more Rachel Dolezals or Jessica Cruz.
Oh, okay.
And here is why, right? I am a Black woman. I am an Afro-Latina Indigenous woman who is understanding that my trajectory in getting the educational credentials that I've received has not been because I didn't deserve it. It has been because there's been a white woman trying to be me, and then the institution fell for her lies and gave her the money that somebody like me could have gotten. And if you want our rhythm, you better carry our blues. Because we do not come with any sort of easy, and I think I heard Ashley in your previous, we don't want handouts.
Right.
We want to work hard. We want to be curious. We want to learn. The moment we stop learning, we leave rooms.
Right. You know, Soribel, I read a recent article where it was saying that we should not anymore talk about achievement gaps. We need to talk about opportunity gaps. So it's not that people aren't able to achieve, it's that they're not provided with the opportunity. So we need to really look at Stop talking about, we don't want handouts. We want, not us, them. We want opportunity. So great point that you're making here.
It's access. Access to information is essential. And this is why this idea of each one teach one is important. I am very biased, and I tell the students all the time, every student that comes into my class, I am very clear. If you are a Black and brown student, I am going to coddle you and nurture you more than I am a white student. And the reason for that is we are only now learning about legacies. You are born into a trust fund and a legacy that I'm sure if education doesn't work for you, you will find something else, or it will find itself for you. Where our Black and brown people, if we're not looking out for each other, we have to find a way to navigate what else is next. And until that mentality of us really coming together in that coalition building sense, beyond civil rights movement, beyond pandemic, we are going to continue being confronted with this, why is she there and why am I not there? Why is he there?
So we better pause right here for a minute, just sit in this for a moment, because you're throwing out some gems, but I just want to grab this one big gem that you threw out here. The fact that we need to build coalitions, and it cannot be out of crisis, right? Because that's usually the tendency. So we have Black Lives Matter, which didn't just start now, they started way back. But now we have these coalitions. What's next? They need to continue. They need to be strengthened. They need to grow larger. So yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because this is not, we're not just moving on a crisis mode here. We need to be thinking about how we're going to make systemic change, and it doesn't happen just with a crisis.
No,
it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy because they're seeing it happen in real time, and they are changing course. So there are a lot of ways where the system can continue to be set up in a way that's against us learning what we need to learn to progress. And it's a system, and it's set up that way, just like Dr. Henao said at the very beginning. So if the ones that are making the rules are still the ones who make the rules, how can you push back against that? What can somebody like you, like me, in an institution where we do not have the strength, number, or position to make or change the rules, what can we do?
Right. And with that, a mother who is sitting with my child is in school, and I know this is not right, how can I help to change the rules?
Yeah. So there's also the discriminatory fact, right? There isn't a system that's not set up for discrimination. The reason our students, our children have had much more difficulties with progressing is because of these exams that are not made for them. And the other word to substitute the decolonizing, if at any point y'all ever want to get less futile with white folks who feel offended or feel like they have to be in the defense, throw culturally relevant at them and have them respond to how much have I reflected on what it is that I don't know. Because that's another factor. Like, I walk into a room as a white man, I am automatically going to be seen and thought to have known everything that I'm probably not aware of. And let me tell you, as somebody who has been very successful in a career that I never even considered I'd take on, whenever my imposter syndrome rolls with me, I become a mediocre white man and just hit submit. Because I have never met somebody so confident like a mediocre white man. And they will proceed in being able to feel like they can be admitted and submitted in every and any room just because of their privilege. So if ever you're insecure about anything, become a mediocre white man in your mind and everything will flip. And I don't know what it is, but they certainly get it.
Teresa, sorry.
Dr. Ganel, do you see this movement towards eliminating the SAT and ACT tests as university entrance requirements as something that I coming from education, I can tell you I wish that they would have done away with it a long time ago. But do you're at the university level, how do you perceive that? Because there is this trend, and not just because of this was before COVID hit and really basically eliminated the requirement because there was no way the students were going to test. But for that, this trend was starting to gain. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it. And let me add, as somebody who's ESL, and I am proud that English is not my first language. As somebody who is ESL, I am not a great test taker. But I'll tell you this, that test, that exam, although I did do well, did nothing for me when I had to acclimate in a white institution that did not understand my social mobility norms.
Right.
That exam did nothing to reflect on all that I was able to bring and to contribute to the classes, because it was my presence that gave all of the cultural power in every single conversation. And as much as I was insecure as a college student who was nowhere near prepared to be at the school I went to, I found a way to stand out, sometimes in a very controversial way, but in a way that certainly didn't reflect what I scored on the SAT. It bothered them that I actually did the reading and didn't agree with what I was reading.
Right.
And was still able to back it up. Just because your work is published and I know what you're doing, you want me to read your work and your friend's work and your friend's friend's work, and I don't agree with it.
Right.
And it was me, without knowing what I was doing, at 19 and 20, I was decolonizing their work, and that was their discomfort.
Right. Right.
And yes, I took some L's. I didn't always get the grade that I wanted, but even that, it's not like I'm concerned about what my GPA was when I was in undergrad. To be where I am today, I actually am proud that, you interpreted what I wrote based on what you assigned in a way that you couldn't handle it. So this was your comeback, and objectivity was not seen.
You know what I'm concerned about, to Teresa's question, and I'm all for testing, because I don't think a test will ever show the full holistic view of a human being's intellect, right? It's a one-shot deal. If I'm a girl, I was having my period today, forget about it, right? If I'm a boy, I'm in a bad mood, whatever it is. But I'm concerned because I've seen coming across my desk that to get around that, what a lot of universities are trying to do now is they want to institute the essay, which is not a problem with the essay, but also they're taking up, increasing the grade averages that they're going to be looking at to come into college. That could be problematic. How do we get around? Because I'm already thinking in my mind, this is going to be a deterrent for many of the students that I service, right? How do we get around that? And I think it is important. I know there are a lot of mothers on this call and some fathers. It is important that we, especially as immigrants, understand the system, because oftentimes we like to say to our children, just go to school and study and get good grades. Listen to what Dr. Soribela shared here. It's more than just going to school and getting good grades. Your child is up against a system that's either you're going to join us and decrease yourself and diminish yourself, or you're going to have to fight against that system with consequences. And sometimes at an age, as you said, 19, it's such a difficult choice to make.
Very difficult. And to your point about the concern about what else is needed, this is also where the supported services that P to 20 students get, and I say P to 20 because no longer are we thinking K through 12 grades. There is enough research out there that's actually stating that the fact that our young Black men are not graduating on time because of discipline issues has less to do with the fact that they can't retain the information. The supported services that are in school are supposed to provide enough information to understand what is actually needed for this student to achieve. And this is where, when students are applying to school, why is it that in New York City, let's say, for instance, and this is beyond New York City, community schools have definitely shown to work. If your school has one guidance counselor for 500 students, why don't you pair up with a community-based organization that's going to assist you in getting those numbers down so that there is enough guidance counselors, school psychologists, social workers with less populations to deal with. A guidance counselor cannot do work readiness, cannot do social emotional retention, cannot do all of the healing. This is when community comes in.
That's right.
And that P20 population is very critical right now, especially with the SATs and the reforming of education and how students are getting in. People are going to have to look at different variables. Forget about the fact that folks are still calling our undocumented students illegals.
Yeah.
There's nothing illegal about them.
Yeah, right.
And if you want to put it mildly, it's usually the undocumented students that want it more than the students that have actually been given the right to have the education here. And it's those students that are constantly working 5 jobs at a time to then have a hold on their account in the next semester because they have to find a way to pay that off before they're enrolled for the next 24, 25 credits.
Right. I have a question here from Lee Lopez, I think. She says that a friend of hers that is a higher ed professor told me, now you're asking me to review the origin and gender of every author I draw my information from. I said, I would think you would do so before telling your students to review such literature. More power to her, Lee. Yeah, so this is one of the strategies that perhaps students have to become a little bit more vocal as to what is placed before them. Where is that coming from?
It shouldn't be the student's responsibility. And it shouldn't be. And as many of you, we're going through this in our own institution and trying to integrate all of this into our curriculum in a way that it sticks and it's not like just check off, we did it, let's move on. Looking at admissions in a holistic way doesn't just help minority students. It helps every student.
Right.
Looking at the assignments that you give students doesn't just help minority students, it helps every student. And looking at the readings that you assign doesn't just help minority students, it helps every student. And it helps you as a faculty member to do the homework of the homework you're gonna give. And one of the challenges I see with the world we're living in now is that when you say, for example, let's not take into account the SATs or ACTs or GREs or whatever it is. The assumption is made that by doing so, you're favoring minorities and lowering standards all at the same time.
Right.
And then that sense that then we're going to be opening the floodgates to people who aren't really qualified to be in here. The only way that we're able to make it in is because we remove the SATs or ACTs.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just as bad as having them in.
Mm-hmm.
Because then now you have a cohort of students coming in that are looked at immediately as less than, just because they're in, because there wasn't a objective way of knowing whether they were going to be able to make it or not. So as we were talking a little bit before, the decolonizing the curriculum goes even beyond the content itself to decolonizing the ones who are teaching it. How do we do that?
Yes, right.
That's a good point. So I'm looking at the notes that I have for y'all about this, and Tricia, you hit it, right? So I'm thinking of like, we start thinking about the addressing of these systemic issues and where do we start, right? It's not okay for us to wait for our students to get into the post-secondary experiences, to go off to college, to go off to work, to start questioning, wait a minute, why didn't they teach me that? It is the teacher preparation programs that are actually teaching how to teach curriculum that are the problem. And I am part of that system. I prepare teachers to be school leaders, district leaders, community leaders. But one of the things I have focused on in the last 10 years is if the majority of my syllabus does not cover Black and Brown communities that I am preparing my populations for, then I am doing a disjustice. Yep. It is not fair. Yep. It is not okay. And what I then take forward is we have to be very mindful about how we diversify the instruction, because it has nothing to do with the instruction and more to do with the reflection. Let's start by teaching empathy curriculum. You are a white teacher. You have no idea what these students are going through before they get into your classroom. Take some time and remove yourself from whatever it is you have planned to understand what resources are you going to need to differentiate your lesson plan. Everybody does not learn the same. And I teach adults now, and there are moments where it takes me longer to teach 2 people in the classroom than the other 8 or 10. And these are post-grad students. So imagining how students in P to 20 are much more vulnerable. They are going to take whatever you take in, and they're going to look at it as, well, the teacher said it was this, so it has to be this, right? This is why there's even this big crisis with teachers wearing religious symbols on necklaces, on earrings, because when you have children that go home and ask their parent, hey, my teacher has a cross on her chain, why don't we have a cross?
Right.
We have to be very mindful of what representation does. And again, if a student is constantly in a school community where all of their teachers do not look like them, there's a huge question mark there. Because it's, again, going back to the representation of what actually happens, not just in the community, but in the school. And I can't help but think about Geneva Gay, professor at in Seattle. And she's all about the theory, right? And listening to theory, but she says it from the very beginning. Unless people of color are in your curriculum is not doing anything.
Wow.
We have to celebrate curriculum that represents these communities that you constantly want to write about.
Right.
One of the things that I have been strong on, even as the diversity fellow, and you know, as Norca said, the chair of the Black and Latinx Faculty and Staff Association, I am so tired of them writing our story. Yeah. And I've been telling them, in as much as I'm fighting for what it is that's right, one thing I am constantly asking for is, let me copy edit. Let me see the proof. Do not hit press, because you are not going to write my story for me anymore. And we have to push our children to ask those questions. The impetus for this conversation is that YouTube or Instagram clip with the mother yelling at the white teacher. I loved it, not because she was white, but because it showed a Black mother infuriated and finally standing up for her child, who the teacher probably thought, well, this mama probably don't care. And mama came from the back of the room and said, oh, really? That's what you're going to do? And just denounced her.
Right.
And that in itself is powerful, because you don't know what our mothers know. You don't know what our fathers know.
Right.
And what we're doing is trusting you as a teacher to do the right thing, and actually molding this vulnerable mind to believe that what you're saying is accurate, and it's not.
Right.
So imagine if that mother wasn't there. The same thing would not have happened.
Right.
Yeah,
I want to give context to that, and I'm going to screen a question here from Tamar so Rebel can answer that question. But I want to give context to, there is on Twitter, and it's now on YouTube, there is a video of a Black mother literally cursing out a white teacher who proceeded to tell her students, or preceded before, saying that George Floyd was no hero, he was a criminal, he should not have been honored.
Wow.
This is egregious. And she's saying this on Zoom, and the mother is listening, and the mother jumps in there and really checks her, and at the end basically tells her daughter, take it off, you're not going to be in this class, right? But the mother had to kind of take over and checked the instructor, and we kind of showed that to Sori Bell, and that is the reason why we wanted to discuss this topic today. But there's a question here from Tamar, who I know I think she's in graduate school, and this is a valid point that she's bringing here. How do we help in that regard? And let me add to that many times, or if I've had students who share with me that their immigrant parents have this belief that the teacher is the authority, the teacher knows it all, the teacher wants your best interest. And sometimes students might be like, no, they don't, but they are not able to understand that you have racist teachers out there that will be using that power dynamics against your child. So, sorry, Belle, what could you answer to Tamar?
Yeah, it's hard. And I think that the complication is that there is these respectability politics that kids learn really young, right? And especially, and I'm not speaking about the generations now, but I know that for us growing up, it was like you just don't intervene in adult conversation. And what your parent says is what it is. And what your teacher says is what it is. And if you ever go against the grain of what the teacher says, you're automatically the problem or the issue. And in these instances, it's very important for parents to check in with their kids. And not check in as in, hey, how are you? What are you doing? Is what is your internal you saying? How are you internally feeling when you're in this class? Are you feeling safe? And that safety doesn't mean that because no one is physically harming you, but students and children from a very early age understand when discomfort is happening. When young boys, and I say young boys because research has them, but even young girls now, because of the push out issues that have been more recently coming out, there is something that's happening to them and nobody is responding to them in time. This is very, very important for us to understand that when the discipline issues come up, it has nothing to do with the behavior. And it has everything to do with the inability to communicate what they're actually feeling. And it comes out in another way. And it doesn't help that every school now wants to test for special ed, because the more students you have with special ed issues, the more money your school gets the following year.
Could you please say that again? Could you please say that again for my community that is listening here? I have been appalled sometimes when, I'm in a community of faith. I see this child stand up and recite large portions of the Bible, does a play, does this, and I'm appalled when the mother comes to me and tells me that this child needs to be in special ed. How? This child, explain this to me.
Yeah.
So please mention, because I think people don't understand the financing and the drive that goes behind this entire special ed machine.
And it's twofold here. And I'm going to explain something to you that I want parents to be very critical of. So the first is, just because your teacher or your school says that your child is qualified for special ed, that doesn't mean that your child has to stay in special ed. Your child may need a resource assistance, or your child may need an evaluation that's going to assist you in assisting your child. And when I say you assisting your child is not the only one in special ed. As a parent, you're also going through it. You're also having to understand how these evaluations are taking place to assist your child. You have to sit there. What has been happening, and keep these dates in mind, October 15 and October 30. Those are the dates that the schools use to determine and project the budget for next year. So when there is an eagerness to have your students show up for more than 30 days at the very beginning of the school year, it has less to do with the caring of your child's safety and educational success and more to do with the projection of the budget. The more students you have in your school that are qualified for special ed services, that is another lump sum of money.
Wow.
Just because your child requires special ed services does not mean that your child has to stay in special ed. And what ends up happening is that, unfortunately, parents are convinced to keep their child in special ed, and then also are qualified to get supplemental services, which means that they get funding every beginning of every month. And when that supplemental income is kicking in, parents are, especially parents from marginalized communities, and it's not to demonize or check into anybody's bank accounts, but what ends up happening is your child then is not provided and given all of the alternative services that they probably deserve if you transition them out. And that stereotype, unfortunately, follows them through because there's also a self-esteem component that's attached to that. They're no longer with the general ed population, and then when they move forward, well, I wasn't aware. I was able to take the regents at one point, then only the RCTs at another point, and I had to be critically and clinically proctored. And again, it's systems in place to keep you so that they make you think you're receiving one thing, but they're actually pulling you back from receiving the ultimate thing, which is a culturally rich and invigorating education that's going to academically challenge them throughout.
Dr. Now, if I may, this brings me back to the video with this mother, and it's really to go back to mothers or adults or parents or guardians who are responsible, especially for, and I'm thinking of elementary school children, because I'm looking at how you just identify how this whole thing is just a systemic issue. And what popped in my mind was the pipeline to prison, that when students in fourth grade here in New York City are now actually looked at, or I guess for political reasons and for prison number reasons, as if they're not at a certain level by that point, we know we can just either steer them towards prison or they're going to be geared towards prison. And so it's how are we getting the adults, the parents, the guardians responsible to start speaking up to address these issues, especially when it comes to curriculum. Just to share briefly, I think that, I don't know if my parents saw it as decolonizing, but they countered what I would come home and say I learned in school. I have parents from the South, and I had Crisis magazine from the NAACP. I was taught other stories of people other than Dr. King and Rosa Parks. And when I went into the classroom, I was able to then say to my teacher, and you're talking about this, and what about this? And then I was questioned. And the blessing is that I was confident enough and courageous enough to say to them, but this is true, because it came from my parents who I looked up to and who said this. And so how do we get younger grade parents to start to speak up against this and being aware and knowledgeable of these things happening, which are gearing them towards not even recognizing what's happening? So by the time they get to higher ed or middle school, junior high school, they're not just so lost, distracted, and they become another statistic.
Yeah, Shonda, you bring up a good point, and kudos to your parents. I mean, not everybody has your parents. And that in itself is an extreme benefit, and it's hard. It's extremely hard. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I have the answer to that, but I will say that what we don't do enough of is reassuring our students, our Black and brown students, that they belong, right? Because what ends up happening is, and again, there's a bunch of research on this, white students do not have much Black and brown friends because of geography.
Right.
It's just where we live. It's the same for Black and brown students. We tend not to have a lot of white faces around us, so that level of real, authentic friendship is not necessarily there. And I bring that up because if we think about how early, when do we start talking about it? It's now. It's now, and it's pushing our parents not just our students, our parents, to question, why don't you belong here? Instead of having them think or asking themselves if they belong there, ask them, why don't you belong here? You are just as qualified. What you have to say is just as important. What you have to do here is just as needed. And we are not having these live discussions with our parents so that that kind of behavior is also trickled down to their students. When parents, especially Black and brown and undocumented families, are here and they're in these spaces where they see white people and white faces, their immediate intimidation factor comes up, and that wall of protection also goes up with them. And they become extremely fearful of what it is that they may or may not say that's going to hinder the opportunity for their child to succeed. And it's not fair. And as educators, it is our job to continue pushing our parents to come into the conversation, to be present. And I'm not even talking about the parents, because of course I understand there are parents that work 3-4 jobs because Maslow is clearly there, right? And I understand that part as well, so much so that that's again where the community schools comes in, and you meet those parents where they are. If you want to truly care for a Black and brown community to succeed, take the school to the parent. School is everywhere. You do not allow your building to shut down so that that family can shut down. A principal that's successful is because the community has been welcoming to them.
Right.
A principal that is actually doing the work is not just about the school building. They are about understanding who owns the bodega in the corner, who is the pastor at the church, who's working at the gas station, why is the train delayed over the weekend, where are they are aware, even if they don't live in that community, but they are so invested in understanding what the day-to-day is for these students that they will see it to succeed. And I always think that whenever I have to present these issues to white men in particular, I think about John Dewey. I'm like, look, in 1938, he went to Vermont. He went to Vermont to try to understand what that community needed. He was only there for 3 months, but he took the time to understand what he didn't live. He wasn't a part of. And we have to celebrate these Black and brown faces so that that celebration goes down to their children and their students. That is a way for us to push. That is also a way for Black and brown students to be able to challenge their teachers and feel comfortable in saying, Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, I know you said this happened last time about math or science, but, here's a counter thought to that. And what do you have to say about that? We don't even give our students that confidence to question things like that. We don't. More recently, I was actually invited to speak on how do we decolonize STEM, right? Think about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and the arts. How do you decolonize that? I said, well, what's interesting is think about every invention from a Black person.
Yep.
The iron is a great example. Sarah Boone, a Black woman, created that iron. She was a scientist.
Refrigerators, speed boards,
right? And those are minor ways to decolonize the conversation. But what they want to do is have us talk about Richard Weber. I don't care what Richard Weber did. In fact, Richard Weber is no longer a part of my life, and he was only a part of the curriculum I had to teach because I could never relate to what he was about when it came to theory or philosophy.
Right.
So it's little things like that go a long way because it also resembles that child's perspective of what they can do and be.
Right.
I think that I'm sorry. One of the things that I believe is one of the most important things we can do is empower parents to be vigilant and to understand the system. I'm an immigrant. My parents were here on scholarships. And I remember that when my brother was in 5th grade, he was the run up to the class and tell the teacher that he wanted to help, that he was that child. He wasn't the one that sat quietly at his desk. And my mom studied at the time, and she always tells the story that she came home and twice the teacher would call when she knew she wasn't at home. And my mom was wondering why that was, to talk about my brother, wondering why that was. And she mentioned it in her class, and she was then taking one of the psychology or educational leadership classes. And the teacher told her, watch out, because if that teacher calls 3 times and leaves a message and you don't call back, what you're saying is you don't care as a parent, and she gets to report you as not caring for your child's education, just because she didn't know the system. And when she got to the teacher and said, what's the problem? He is misbehaving. How is he misbehaving? Well, whenever a child has a problem, instead of letting me go, he offers to help the other child. That was the misbehaving. It wasn't being rude. It wasn't being rowdy. It was being helpful, which is something that in our culture is something that we encourage them to do. So it becomes very important for parents to get to know the system. Not just get to know the teacher, but get to know the system, because there can be so many hidden agendas that if you're not conscious of what is actually going on, then you suffer, your child suffers, and you don't know what happened until after it happened.
Very true. And I urge you to think about the Kenneth and Mamie Clark, the psychology test, the doll test. Right. And think about how even that test had implications on Brown versus Board of Ed, right? Because what it said is, here we are segregating and separating our Black children, which then led to this high level of inferiority because they did not think they belonged.
Right.
So if we come and lead from a non-deficit mindset and encourage the parents, then tell them you are just valuable here as your child. You may not be a physical student, but you are part of this system. And we need to them, no matter how far or near or physical or not, their voices matter, because it's the only way that we're going to understand why and what our students need.
Exactly. And Dr. Soribel, I think that one of the issues with education is that it takes so long, to come into actually establishing these new ideas, or shifting paradigms. And I remember being in secondary education and telling my administrator, you know what, we are no longer the center of this. We can no longer expect our students, to interact with us the same way. And I remember her just, sometimes not agree with me, because she was very much, on her way out. She's, kind of the old guard type of her upbringing and her academic training. And I just kept seeing that writing on the wall. And I think one of the most vivid images that I have of my understanding of this change in paradigm, I asked my last senior class that I had, I said to them, hey, it's like when you answer back to your parents, right? And I had all these kids, they're like, we never answer back to our parents. Like, you don't answer back to your parents. Like, my kids answer me, my answer back to me. They have that ability to say, Mom, no, I don't agree with you. What you're saying doesn't, match, what I've, seen or studied or read or whatever. And, and it really shocked me at that point. And I think it all has to come down to the way parents see themselves in this mix of their child's education. And I know that not everybody has, Shonda's parents that, they're like, oh no, we're going to tell you how it is. And I think it's because a lot of parents have been sold this idea, and they still hold on that teachers are the center of the universe, that they know everything, that they hold the keys, to all knowledge. And we don't, I'm taking a sabbatical right now from 23 years in education. And one of the biggest, epiphanies that I've had is understanding that I am no longer, the center of all knowledge as I thought I was. I am here as a guide, and I am here to help you formulate questions for want to learn. And it took me a long time. For many I was in that traditional mindset of what education had been for me and for generations back. And to change that is I think one of the things that helped me to finally come into that new way of thinking was this. As a parent, I always thought, oh, my teachers' kids, know them, they're with them, they're going to share, all their knowledge with them. But understanding that as a parent, I have more influence over my child than any other adult in their life. That changed it, because I grew up in a system where they taught me whatever the teacher says, you're going to do, right? And so I always thought, I thought that about myself too, that my students had to do what I wanted them to say, think, and do. And to understand that, no, parents have such a powerful position in their child's, worldview. That helped me to start thinking about how I interacted with my child and those conversations, and making sure that they were able to question my rationale, question my information, and because when they did that, they were actually able to think for themselves. Just wanted to share that.
No, so I appreciate the fact that congratulations, you're on a sabbatical. It is probably the best thing. And I recommend anybody who can do it, just do it. It is so freeing, so liberating. But I want to touch on going back to the systems, like going back to this questioning of ideologies and questioning of why are things this way? Why do things have to be this way, right? I want you all to think of New York City, for example. Up until Carmen Farina, who was the chancellor before Richard Carranza, who's currently our chancellor, we did not have one educator in office.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind.
Wow.
Carmen Farina was the first one who did not need a waiver.
Yeah.
So before that, we had Ramon Cortines, we had Rudy Crew, who's now the president of Medgar Evers, and you know what that's looking like right now. We had Harold Levy, we had Joel Klein, who was an attorney, we had Kathy Black, who was in PR, we had Dennis Walcott, who was an economist, and then comes Carmen Farina.
Yeah.
Oh
right?
my goodness.
So think of all of these people, and then it's reflective of our federal government. I mean, Betsy DeVos is far from what we need in education right now, and clearly doesn't have knowledge, basis, skills, or disposition to understand that our country cannot be compared from a global perspective, because we are not homogenous.
Right.
We are not
Exactly.
homogenous.
Right.
When we also think about the Common Core. The Common Core was rolled out in 2012. If you ever have the time, and I'm not urging you to do it because it's not the most popular policy out there, but if you ever have the time to really read it, it makes all the sense in the world. What ended up happening was that it was rolled out poorly. And they wanted Obama to do something that was going to be under his watch. Common Core was implemented in 1969 under LBJ when Sputnik happened. And they realized that, wait a minute, the Russians are smarter than the US. Oh no, now we have to create an education system that's going to be just as good as the Russians. And LBJ left, Nixon left, Carter left, Reagan left. That wasn't on top of their agendas. Education was never on top of their agendas. Then we have No Child Left Behind. Every child was left behind. And Common Core happened. So we think of all these policies in place that the parents are clearly not being spoken to about, because if you don't include their voices, we're going to make those decisions for them.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you have the time, right, you have the moment to actually understand which parents are or can be involved. It's the parents that are paying high taxes, property taxes, so that their kids are educated with quality curriculum, innovative pedagogy, and has a leader that has the time to dedicate to the community in a way that's going to give everybody everything that they ask for back. So one of the, even now when we think about the more recent Trump fiasco with saying that diversity trainings need to be
it's racist. It's only in the debate. It's a racist.
Right.
Yeah.
Very recently, one of the best teachings that happened on Twitter, which was amazing because it was all Black and brown people, like these amazing, legitimate high scholars who are also practitioners came together and sat there and spoke about whiteness as property, spoke about the idea that you should not be distracted about CRT and diversity trainings. What we are actually getting disrupted with is the fact that 200K people died under his watch, and this is another distraction. We had to start thinking about the core concepts of culturally responsive theories. Has nothing to do with diversity, has nothing to do with inclusion. It's just to add value to the fact that if we do not represent our students in what we're teaching, we are not doing service to the entire educational system. We had folks that were very clear on understanding CRT and diversity trainings are not the same thing. They may be embedded in each other's ideologies, but it is not the same thing. And moving forward to that, we're thinking about just how do we begin to introduce truth and explaining how we actually need to expose this not just to the students, but to the parents. Our administrations are so systematically corrupt in the ideologies that have to do less with the students and the communities and more to do with the cronyism and the nepotism of bringing in people that they know. And I will be very honest in saying that assessing the culture of power is extremely important. It's the fear that impedes us from questioning why is this person still here.
That's right.
If we were to really conduct from, and not just public service or nonprofit, if we were to look at the corporate sector and do equity audits and understand who's getting paid what and for what, we would be letting folks know, and that in itself will liberate a whole lot of funding to go to things that actually matter. We have to start amplifying voices and the stories of these students and their ancestors. We cannot continue to let them, again, not just write our stories, but tell it. Somehow they always leave the important parts out, right? We also have to teach beyond the basics. Like, yes, you know that you have to teach 5 points throughout the day. Be very mindful of embedding those stories within your curriculum, making sure that you're adding those nuggets so that students can actually come back with questions based on what they know. I will never forget, in 2011, I was at the old Franklin K. Lane in East New York in Cypress Hill. And the history and global teachers were having the hardest time getting the students to pass their global studies. I said, well, you know, they're all listening to Jay-Z. Why don't you teach the Magna Carta? Why don't you break down those lyrics and see what happens? That spring, it was the most significant tick in what it was that the students were actually understanding, because all they needed was that push to use lyrics to understand how history was repeating itself. Jay-Z is a hip hop artist, but he knew about the Magna Carta and he was cool. Now we have to know about the Magna Carta. And it's moments like that truly reveal how much the administration cares to support the students. And it's only through those relationships with the faculty, with the community, that we can then go about how do we teach about racism. We cannot wait. We cannot wait for our students to go on into the world on their own. We have to start as soon as they start questioning, why doesn't anybody look like me in this room? And when they question that, you celebrate it and you say, no, that's good. Your difference matters here. The fact that you're the only one of your kind is great. It's great, instead of feeling the inferiority that has been systemically perplexing and then come to find out I didn't realize that I was the only different person until I got to post-secondary.
Yeah.
And it's tough. And then finally, to learn how to practice and teach, but also be about the social justice.
Right.
I'm not going to sit here and talk about injustice. It's the social justice. Because what ends up happening is that teachers are really big on exploring and exposing how Black History Month or Latinx Hispanic Month, and we're going to do this cultural awareness of this. No, our culture is not a month long.
That's right.
The whole year.
Our cultures are in everything that we do every single day. And it is not our job to teach you. It is your job to learn.
Right.
They are really quick. They are really, really quick to have us learn about the quote unquote forefathers of Mount Rushmore, but are not quick enough to learn about our stories.
That's right.
And it's more important for them to learn about us than it is for us to learn about them, because they're working with us.
That's right.
So I'll leave those nuggets for you there.
Listen, those are powerful nuggets.
Yeah. Yes.
Very powerful. We want to affirm you, because I am sure that people are watching and they're going to watch the replay again, because there's certain sections that you have said that people want to revisit. And we need to revisit because the pandemic has brought everything to light, but it also has made us question our own internalized racism, right? Made us question the way we have been taught to look at everything through this colonized mindset. And now we need to also query and question ourselves about that, and as parents and as professionals. So I see some of the comments here. Our culture is our everyday life. Yes, Glenda. Arlene is saying we cannot turn on or off our culture. It's our life that we live with every day. Students have to learn about it as well. Have the right, absolutely. And this is, I think, the most important message that you're bringing to us here, Soribel. It's not a month, it's not a day, it's every day. Glenda says here, thank you. You clear up a lot of things for me. I know that there are a lot of mothers who have children, especially who are listening to this program. And I'm sure that a lot of what you have said has really made them think, and you're giving them the tools to be able to fight the right battle, right? So we want to affirm you. And we're going to start with Teresa, affirming you. We always do this with all our guests. There are not enough platforms on this world that can affirm Black and brown women for what we bring to the table. Yeah. And when we work for these very big institutions, oftentimes what we do and what we bring is not appreciated. And it's not necessarily that we want to be appreciated in that way, but it's about the acknowledgement. So we want to acknowledge what you have brought to the Pink Room and what it has done for us and what it has done for those women who will be listening to us going forward, mothers and daughters and all the young women. So Teresa, we give you the chance to begin with your affirmation.
Thank you. Yes, I think as an educator, as a parent, I can't but ask you to continue to extend every one of those powerful messages that you've left with us. I mean, thank you for I think being a representation of what we should all be embracing. You know, I want to thank you. I just want to say that in every aspect of my life, I think that making all of your those everything that you've shared with us today, but just by seeing you and the way you carry yourself and the things that you have that you do as an educator yourself, I can't but say thank you for every one of those young men and women who will see you. So thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow. So I just want to affirm that you affirm students who may not ever hear affirmation coming from any other places in their lives except for in an educational environment where they realize that they are there not because the parents or the adults in their lives tell them that they have to be there, but that they realize it. And so I'm affirming you for affirming them and hoping that they will pass on and do just the same with all that you will give them and continue to be your best for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I so appreciate the fact that you are training the leaders and that you are training all leaders, not just some leaders, but all leaders, and teaching them what they need to know in order to lead education effectively so that it does what it should do for every child. Thank you for being with us today and for everything. You have met and exceeded every expectation that Norca prepared us with before this Pink Room. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And on my end, sorry, Belle, I'm an admirer of your work. I count it as an honor to be able to work with you, along with you. We share so many ideals. But I think more than anything, I am proud to see a woman in your generation taking this mantle on. And I know the battle of having to break those barriers down. You know, we're always in contact, but I want you to understand that sometimes at those levels, we may not necessarily get the responses that we need, but look at what you have been able to deposit here today. So besides the great work that you do with training school teachers and the work that you do in the community and your passion, think about how many other people are going to be not only empowered, but also educated. I don't want to use the word educated, but are able to acknowledge the fact that they're not crazy, that something is wrong with the system. And here it is that you gave them the tools and you gave them the power to be able to challenge it and allow their children to challenge it. So I just want to thank you. We're infinitely blessed for having you come in today. I mean, you spoke truth to power, you brought the tools, you made us think about the way we were educated and made us think about the way we need to now make sure that our children and our young people are educated. So we thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me. We cannot continue to accept what already belongs to us.
Yes.
This is not for us, and we deserve more, and we're here for it. So keep that in mind. And just ask. All you have to do is ask.
Yes. True. And I want to read some final comments here. Glenda Nicholas says, thank you, Dr. Hinao. I appreciate and applaud you for depositing great wealth in others and me tonight. I thank you again. We have your Margaret. She's saying, thank you, Dr. Hinao. Damaris, thank you for that. Much appreciated, Dr. Hinao. I affirm you in the name of mothers, grandmothers, and students, a voice in the wilderness. You're a spoker. Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we have Fiona saying thank you, Dr. Hinao, also, and Margaret. So we're going to end tonight with just giving we usually give our audience a small to-do, a window of what are the next steps going forward? What should you be able to expect and be able to incorporate in your own life going forward as we face the many challenges that we'll continue to face in this world and in this nation and all over. So we're going to start with Tricia.
So I think that one of the challenges we've had as we go through COVID and all the other social unrest and everything we're facing is this idea of, is there a lesson that I'm supposed to learn? And sometimes that idea of having to learn a lesson is not something pleasant. It's not something that we believe we need, but we're being forced to face something that we don't necessarily want to see. And what I would encourage us to do this week is to find the blessing in the lesson, not just the lesson, but a blessing in it. There has to be something that we can find that brings us joy, that brings us growth, that brings us accomplishment in the middle of everything that we're facing. And if it's not easy to find it, the more the reason why we should kind of dig deep into what's happening in our lives and find something that blesses us or a way that we can bless others in everything that we're going through. So find the blessing in the lesson.
Thank you so much for that, Tricia. Shonda.
Yes, and I would like to say give voice and respect to your inner voice. And how I'd like you to add this to your must do to do list is sometimes we hear our inner voices and we're so used to being conditioned, indoctrinated, oppressed with it that especially we as women of color, black and brown women, that we usually internalize so much of what we're thinking and feeling that we don't even respect our own voices. And in order for others to respect you and for you to respect yourself, respect your inner voice. There's probably someone put up a quote in the chat room about being a lioness. You are a lioness. And what you have to say is valuable and it should be heard, especially in times like this, especially when our rights keep being infringed upon. And so please respect what your inner voice is telling you, how you feel, and what you think. You have the abilities, open up and say exactly what's going on in there.
Thank you very much, Shonda. Teresa.
Yes. After years of living with misinformation or, coming to the realization that what you were told, what you were taught is not true, you have quite a few emotions that you're going to be experiencing. One is, could be like utter disgust because you trust it. And so my to-do list for you is this: avoid being overwhelmed when the truth is in view, when you have come into enlightenment, when you've realized that what you thought was right turned out not to be right. Start slow. And you need to begin by realizing and by accepting the fact that those people who you trusted to teach you in school, church, wherever, and they didn't provide you with accurate knowledge, then you must also understand, before going at I think going at it in a vicious way, and I speak from experience because I was very angry finding out a lot of the misinformation that I have been taught as a child in school and in other institutions that I belong to. When I realized that it was a very I think gut-wrenching experience, and so my recommendation is one. You take it slow and you realize that the people who have taught you in the past misinformation or things that weren't true, or in this case recognized curriculum, that's what they were taught and that's what they were indoctrinated with. So I think finding the time to process and also letting go of processing the anger and finally letting it go, and then coming into the realization that you have more to learn and more to share.
All right. Thank you so much, Teresa. And I just want to remind everyone that this time is time for us to question everything. This is inquiry time. This is querying time. This is the time for us to question the status quo. Tradition has its place for the preservation of history in some levels and sometimes for culture, but tradition is often married with the support of a lack of progress. We need to question, what are the foundations for these practices? Why are we still learning this misinformation? What other elements are missing from what we should have learned? This is the time to question, and never feel that your voice doesn't matter, or that the powers that be are so strong that you don't have a voice and that your voice will not make a change. It is the time for us to question and teach our children to also ask the questions that would help to push us forward. So I'm going to bring everyone on, and we just want to say goodbye to you from our pink room to your room. We thank you because you could have chosen to watch anything tonight. You did not have to be watching us on Facebook Live or on YouTube.
NBA Finals.
And you, excuse me?
NBA Finals.
And you, the NBA, and you chose to do so anyway. So we want to thank you because you could have been you could have been doing anything else. We want to remind you that our next Pink Room is on October 18th at 7:30. And we also want to remind you that October 11th is the Day of the Girl, and the theme is My Voice for Equal Future. Make sure that the girls in your family are celebrated, affirmed, highlighted. And if there are no girls in your family, the girls in your neighborhood, in your community, whoever, the girls in your community of faith, this is the time to celebrate. Dr. Henao, once again, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank everyone. Please have a good day, everyone.
Yes.
And we leave you today, and we look forward to seeing you on the 18th.
Yes.
Bye.
And we'll see you next time in the Pink Room.
The Pink Room is a produced resource of For Real Women International, Inc., a non-profit organization with headquarters in New York and affiliates in the United States, Latin America, and the Caribbean. The views expressed here by hostesses and guests do not necessarily represent the philosophy of For Real Women International, its affiliates, members, and board of directors.